If we're not allowed to do fun stuff after we get vaccinated, why are we getting vaccinated? New guidance on what is safe once we have the shots. A wobble in our statewide COVID numbers is looking like more than just a blip. Denver's low rate of anti-Asian hate crimes is no excuse for what some Colorado politicians like to say these days. A state legislator has a nifty idea to protect our personal information. Then he saw the price tag.
It's a little bit like when you buy your first car and you're like, hold on, how much was that?
And I don't know if this is like Ninja Turtles or an exorcism or what, but it ain't right. And it's next. Doctors and scientists are understandably cautious about giving us a hall pass to just go out and do whatever we want once we're vaccinated. But if we can't get back to something like normal life, that wrecks a lot of the incentive for people to get the shot. The guidance appears to be loosening a bit. Our Anusha Roy talked to experts about why.
We went from being unsure about people spreading COVID after being vaccinated to a different understanding.
But two of the studies that were performed looked, both Moderna and J&J, looked at individuals that had been vaccinated and then had them swab themselves.
Pfizer is also being studied.
And we're starting to get some data, although it's early and it's not complete.
So far, these studies are finding that the risk of someone fully vaccinated spreading COVID is low. The tests are being done by both tracking if people who are vaccinated infect other people near them and in labs.
So that's the laboratory version, but how does it perform in real life? And that's, I think, where we still don't have enough numbers.
Dr. Michelle Barron with UC Health said the idea is that a person who is fully vaccinated would not be able to build up enough of a viral load to transmit to someone else. But the studies are not over, which means there is a lot to learn about transmission and its impact on slowing the pandemic down. This month, we saw the CDC announce guidelines allowing fully vaccinated people to get together indoors without a mask or visit with unvaccinated folks from one other household unless they are at higher risk for falling really sick or live with someone who is. And doctors say it's based both off of the studies and a general understanding of how vaccines work.
A little bit of both. And, people should not be surprised that things have changed.
While the data is still new and incomplete, doctors like John Hammer with Health One said it's also a balancing act based off the way people have been living in the last year.
Weighing that against the risk of the ongoing isolation.
So both the doctors were talking about how the vaccines aren't 100% right, and COVID precautions are still so important right now, whether you're vaccinated or not. I mean, that goes for public areas like grocery stores. If you're seeing someone who's at higher risk for COVID, and the CDC is saying avoid those big gatherings still, no matter what, if you're vaccinated or not. And just as a reminder, fully vaccinated, that means at least 2 weeks after your second dose of the Moderna or Pfizer vaccine, and at least 2 weeks after the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, Kyle.
We appreciate the fact that the experts talk us through the uncertainty, why they're uncertain, what they're looking at, and a key area of uncertainty, Anusha, has been variants lately.
Yeah, and that's such a big factor, right, that a lot of people are keeping tabs on. And that's also the area that's still being studied, and there's so much to be learned about those variants. And so, the understanding right now is that the vaccines could be providing some protection against the variants. It could be more for some variants versus others. But that important question about transmission after getting your shots, that is definitely still being researched.
And a lot of it just comes down to people's individual risk tolerances, but it's been that way all along. All right, Anusha, thank you so much. Nearly 13.5% of our state's population is now fully vaccinated. That's more than 773,000 people. We'll be to 1 million before we know it. 479,000 Coloradans are still waiting on a second shot of the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine. You got to remember, whenever we look at this pie chart, 20% slice of that dark blue area is ineligible for the vaccine because it's not approved for kids. There are about 600 known cases of various variants in Colorado right now. Up in Aspen, 2 whole elementary school classes worth of kids and their families are in quarantine because a kid tested positive for what they think is the variant out of the UK. Nobody up there's needed to go to the hospital in this situation so far. Everybody's just kind of hanging out at home, waiting on tests. It's clear that our hospitalization numbers statewide are not dropping. In fact, they may not even be plateauing because we've seen 3 straight days of increases. up to 345 patients right now. This time last week, we had 300 patients in hospitals with COVID. So that's a significant increase. We're going to watch to see this week if it's essentially flattening out or if we are headed into a sustained rise in numbers. Important to note, we are not anywhere near challenging hospital capacity with the number of patients. Our positivity rate's also inching up. It was 3.4% yesterday. Our weekly average is now at 3.5%. It was hanging out at like 3.2% for most of March. We're still, though, coming out of that wonky period of testing during the snowstorm, so stay tuned later this week on that. Colorado's fiscally conservative House Minority Leader introduced a bill that is exactly the opposite of fiscal conservatism. Republican Representative Hugh McKean is not exactly a spendy-spenderson type. He was, though, curious about the information that the state has collected for, among other things, COVID-19 contact tracing. And McKean wanted state employees to retroactively reach out to you and offer to delete your information that they've kept on you. He wanted to do that until he and our politics guy, Marshall Zellinger, saw what this was going to cost.
Who doesn't have your personal information these days? The state apparently collects enough that it would be way too expensive to do what Republican Representative Hugh McKean wants to do.
So my bill would actually give people the opportunity to ask the state to purge their personally identifiable information on a regular basis.
McKean wants each state department to notify you every 90 days about the information it has about you and offer to keep it or delete it. Personal information like medical information and biometric data, username and email addresses, credit card numbers, IP addresses, geolocation, you get it. Doesn't matter. This bill from a fiscal conservative is not going anywhere anymore.
It's a little bit like when you buy your first car and you're like, hold on, how much was that? This one was $2.7 billion with a B dollars.
What now?
This one was $2.7 billion with a B dollars.
Fiscal notes estimate how much a bill would cost. Remember, we showed you last month how fiscal notes are created and spell out the bottom line.
This is not just a cost of $2.7 billion. It's an increase of 6,800 state employees.
Will you continue with this bill?
No. Now I think we can take the information we got and convert this bill, which would require the state to notify people, into more of a study about what we do with data and how we secure it. And that won't cost a penny.
To McKean's concern with contact tracing and the information collected, according to the state health website, it's not supposed to be much information. They don't ask you for your social security number or any financial information, and state health is supposed to not share your personal health information or personally identifiable information without notifying you in the first place. That's just one area, contact tracing, one area of one State Department about a bill that would have focused on every State Department, Kyle.
Marshall, politics is not always laugh out loud funny, but I laughed out loud when you asked Minority Leader McKean if he was going to continue with the bill, and he was like, no.
Logistically, it's still going to have a hearing. He's going to ask for it to be tabled or postponed indefinitely, but he's going to want to bring it back, and maybe not postpone indefinitely, that's actually a term, but he's going to have it tabled and then perhaps add an amendment that makes it a study. We love studies in politics, to look at, hey, what can a State Department do without the legislature telling you to do it and proactively notifying? How about you just do it behind the scenes without having to hire 6,800 people to do it?
I wonder now if the Republican Minority Leader is concerned that given the billion-dollar price tag and the opportunity to create nearly 7,000 new state employees, whether his worry at this point is that Democrats might steal his idea and try to pass it. We'll ask him about that next time we talk. Marshall, thank you very much. You have talked to us here quite a bit about how much we adults have been asking of kids during the pandemic and the strain of remote learning, even on families that have resources, still a real burden. Some next viewers in northern Colorado pointed out a longtime nonprofit there that has a real track record with helping young people that have challenges succeed in school throughout this difficult year. They're preparing now for what learning might look like through the summer months. Our Word of Thanks microgiving campaign this week, at your suggestion, spotlights the Matthews House in northern Colorado. The Matthews House started 15 years ago helping young people who are aging out of the foster care system. And now they try to intervene earlier with at-risk kids. One of their great success stories, they say, is educational support, helping students stick with school and get on track to graduate. Their program has grown 8 times larger during the pandemic due to need. That nonprofit now has 14 learning sites in Fort Collins and Loveland. They tell me last fall, students came in with an average of 45 in their classes and left their program with an average grade of 73%. The Matthews House is getting ready to help hundreds of students in northern Colorado learn throughout the summer. They'll be making up credits that they missed. They'll be trying to get on track to graduate. All of this is with that nonprofit's big goal in mind, to help these kids and their families overcome poverty and achieve self-sufficiency for generations. This is really important work, and together we can help them do more of it for more students, more families. Text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491, and I'll send you that link to donate. As always, I'll match the first 50 donations of $5 to get us rolling tonight. Can you imagine being a student dealing with online or hybrid learning or the potential of summer classes coming up, and you don't have a family that's able to provide you with a lot of support? Tonight, we can help the Matthews House be that support. Law enforcement says COVID-19 has created a dangerous public safety issue, and a bill before the state legislature would make it permanent. Some thoughts on the recent violence against Asian Americans in our country and the Colorado politicians who insist on flirting with bigotry. Next. America's talking about hate and violence directed at Asian Americans after the killings in Georgia at massage parlors and the attacks on the streets of some major cities. Denver police have not recorded many instances of anti-Asian hate crimes here. One such case so far this year, 3 last year, none in the prior 5 years. The small sample size, in my view, should not dissuade us from thinking that the prejudice doesn't exist here or make us lackadaisical about fighting it. Which brings me to the folks in Colorado politics, elected and unelected, who insist, even during this period of fear in the Asian American community, they insist on dropping the phrase China virus with a smile on their face. We being logical, thinking people, know what you're doing. It's not helpful, it's not cool, it's not insightful. In fact, it actually might be inciting. Your Asian American neighbors, your constituents, are asking you to stop. We know what you're doing. And the thing is, you know too.
After a few flurries this morning, the sunshine back in action across the Front Range. A beautiful afternoon and evening as we watch our storm system pushing out, some drier air moving in across the metro area, and that'll mean clear skies for us tonight. We are still monitoring this system pushing in across the southeast, the deep south, as they're looking at possible tornadoes late tonight into early tomorrow morning. This evening here in Denver, about 20 degrees, our skies clearing out. Teens in northern Colorado, up in the high country too, and really overall we'll be watching this huge ridge of high pressure building back into Colorado. That brings us some dry weather and warmer temperatures too. Daytime highs back to the mid 40s tomorrow. Soak in some of the sunshine. It'll probably feel a little warmer than that. We'll be looking at a lot of melting as we head toward the weekend. First day of spring, back to low 60s, but I am tracking more rain and snow for the start of next week.
Tired? A mayor complaining about the direction his city's going. Wired. A mayor suing his own city to make it easier for his allies to get elected. And can we briefly talk about what in the name of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is happening with this manhole cover in Denver? There's an explanation. It's not turtle power, and it's next. We've talked here about Democrats at the state capitol who have an idea to have police arrest people for fewer things, basically. They want more summonses, like tickets to appear in court, and less automatic trips to jail. Today, law enforcement in Adams County came out and was like, how about no? They unanimously came out in opposition to the bill from Democratic State Senator Pete Lee that would direct police to arrest fewer people for certain crimes. Instead, just give them that summons to appear in court. Stuff like property theft, weapons possession, even inciting a riot or insurrection, which I hear is popular with some folks. The letter from Adams County law enforcement came out of the sheriff's office. It was co-signed by a lot of city police chiefs. Says they think that this will result in more crime and more crime victims. They point to higher crime lately and current restrictions based on COVID on who can be brought into the jails. The concern from law enforcement in Adams County is that this bill makes that situation permanent. Aurora Mayor Mike Kaufman is suing his own city with the help of a conservative group. He's trying to gain some more freedom in order to get his friends elected to city government. Kaufman says that this is a free speech issue. An ordinance passed by Aurora City Council last year does not allow candidates for city council to give money to each other in certain ways. Kaufman says that this is an attempt to keep him from helping to get like-minded candidates elected. So Kaufman sues his city. City taxpayers will fund the city's defense against the suit from their mayor. City tells us it's taking a look at that lawsuit. That manhole needs an exorcism or something. One of our photojournalists, Anna Houston, spotted this dancing metal on 50th Avenue in Denver on Tuesday. First, naturally, she called Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters referred her to Denver Water to see if they knew what was going on with the dancing manhole cover. Denver Water says sometimes manhole covers can make some noise or move around a bit as underground pipes are filled with water. This is more than a bit of movement, though. I have never seen this. Is this the thing that happens? You all have seen this before? Apparently, they push the water in, the air moves up. In this case, it's a lot of air trying to get out of that one manhole cover. Denver Water says normally they have systems in place to avoid this, like vents near the manholes that allow the air pressure to be released. Doesn't look like Ninja Turtles. The head of the nonprofit that you all are helping this week through your Word of Thanks campaign told me very happily today, you guys weren't in our budget for this year. And that's what your microgiving campaigns do. It gives nonprofits in our state an unexpected boost after a year when most of the unexpected stuff has been pretty terrible. That and your feedback next. Remote learning. It is a real son of a biscuit, even for kids who have great help from their parents. Students without as much family support, they can get lost in it. Maybe even think about leaving school altogether, depending on their age. The Matthews House is a nonprofit in northern Colorado that has a big mission to help youth and families escape poverty and become self-sufficient. And one smaller focused way that they're doing that lately is with dedicated learning support for high schoolers. They do this at 14 locations in Fort Collins and Loveland. Our donations through Word of Thanks this week will help them support students through the summertime as those students make up lost credits, catch up in school, and stay on track to graduate. Text thanks to 303-871-1491 to join me and a bunch of great folks in donating. This nonprofit has a 15-year proven track record of success. And this is a kind of success that can change lives and change families as a result. I, for one, honored that we get to help out with this. A lot of feedback from you tonight on my commentary tonight about the political leaders in Colorado who insist on dropping the phrase China virus all the time, even as Asian Americans in our community and elsewhere around the country talk about the fear they feel about violent incidents. Ray says, Kyle, thank you. Bigots need to be called out. Hunter, though, is curious and skeptical, says, is Spanish flu racist? In 2015, WHO suggests that we stop naming viruses after places unless we just want to make people angry at people.